What is that? What kind of distribution? There's so many values or variables and their values take. What do we call that distribution? It's so, you've already told us once tonight. What distribution you all said?
Normal distribution?
A normal distribution. What the hell makes it a normal distribution? As opposed to an abnormal distribution? What is a normal distribution? You ever heard of a normal distribution?
Well, it's symmetrical, it tapers off at the ends, and it has a big middle.
Yeah, it is the so-called bell-shaped curve. You know, it's what we want, it's what we say about tests. We want to curve the test. Yeah, be careful about that. Most of the times in college, you don't want to curve the test. Because what do they mean? There are two things. There's one thing that the professor says curve it means. There's another thing the students say. What do they say curve means?
Add points.
Add points to it. What does the teacher say?
Make it fit the bell.
Make it fit the bell-shaped curve. Oh, really? So the grades ranged from, 86 to 64, and the average was 80. You sure you want to make it fit the curve?
How would you do that? Would you just slide them out until some people got 99 and everyone else and always
Well,
zero?
what is an average? What does that mean around Texas A&M and most places? What is average?
Center point.
What?
C.
C. Look in the grade book in the university rules. It says C means average. I think that's kind of the weirdest thing I've ever heard of, because you make all C's, you just barely do graduate. Not average at all, but that's what they say C means, is average. But let's just say that it means 75. What did I say the average on the test was? 80. Okay? So that means, the average person made a B. But you want me to curve it. Now I've got to make the average be 75. Whoa. Be careful about that. So can I tell you my story about that? I'll tell you my story, because it's the only time this ever happened to me where I did something good. I was at Iowa State. Moved up there in summer of 1975, late summer of 1975, with my wife, a 3-year-old, and a 3-month-old. We moved 1,000-something miles from Sweeney, Texas, in a U-Haul truck, unair conditioned, in July, from Sweeney, Texas, to Ames, Iowa, pulling our car. Okay? I mean, I couldn't let her drive the car and take 2 kids and that kind of stuff. And our son, he had Theo. Theo was his stuffed bear. That's what he called him, Theo. He was Teddy Bear, and we just named him Theodore Nude. Teddy Bear.
That is great.
And so he was Theo, and the bear in there, and the 3-month-old. We didn't have a car seat. You didn't put babies in car seats in 1975. And we moved to Iowa, and I started the graduate school, Randy. You kind of identify with this. I was all of 23 years old. And starting a PhD program, and I was in my stat class with Tony Natussel teaching that class. And he was noted as being a failure. And so got to be on a quarter system. That's a 10-week grading period, quarters rather than semesters. 3 quarters in a year and a summer quarter. So we were in the quarter system. We got about 4 weeks in, 3 weeks in, going to have the first test. Well, one of my professors, the guy that I TA'd with at the time, he invited me to go way down in the southeast corner of the state for a beginning teacher workshop. your professor invites you to go along on a, Tuesday afternoon, Tuesday evening, what do? You get in the truck. Okay, we got in the car, we went to down on the other side of Knoxville, Iowa, and went to this beginning teacher workshop, and, we conducted things there, and they laughed at the way I talked and stuff, and then we came back to Ames, and on the way back, he asked me, well, how are classes going and stuff? I said, well, Dr. Byler, Ben Byler, I said, Dr. Byler, it's going okay. I've got Tony Metusel's first test tomorrow. What? You got his first test tomorrow? What the devil are you doing? Going down, you ought to be home studying. I said, well, I didn't know. You invited me to come. I didn't know I had the choice of saying no. Oh man, you should have said something. I wouldn't have asked you to come down if you didn't take the test. So I get home, get a little studying in, go in there the next day and take the test. And okay, I think I do pretty good on the stuff. And I come back the next class period and I get my test. And I scored a 72. I'll never forget it. I scored a 72. Have you ever done that kind of thing? I thought I was going to faint. All the blood ran out of my head. I couldn't catch my breath. My life flashed before me. I'm going to have to go home. Pull up stakes, take that family back to Sweeney and start teaching ag again, and buy me another trailer house and live in it and all that kind of stuff. Man, I was. And then he told us something like that was a T-score. Well, he hadn't told us what a T-score was, but I found he went to explain it a little bit, and he said, help me with this just a little bit now. Kyle, yeah, you'll understand this, Kristen. Those of you who understand standard deviation. A T-score, you normalize everything to an average being 50. Okay? An average being 50. That's not very good in graduate class, is it? But that's what an average is a 50. Doesn't mean you got 50% right. It just means the average score is 50. And the standard deviation is normalized at 10. And I scored a 72. What did that mean?
You were an outlier.
I scored 2.2 standard deviations above the mean. Huh?
You did well.
I did well. I set the curve. The only time I ever did. So I got to tell you that story. The only time I ever did something right. But I set the curve on that test. And I thought, because, did he have my attention? Do you think I understand standard deviation? Do you think that made an impression on me? You dadgum right, it did. Standard deviation and deviation from the mean. And what standard deviation mean and what normal distribution is means so dadgum much. Okay? Now let's talk about a normal distribution. A normal distribution has all kinds of characteristics. It's sometimes called a z-distribution. A z-distribution. Okay? We can get z-scores. In fact, we compute a z-score to compute a t-score. And in a z-score, standard deviation is 1. Okay? And a t-score, you just take the z, 0, that's mean, and you add 50 to it. Now, the average score is 50. Then you take the standard deviation calculated and multiply it by 10. Now it's 10 rather than 1. And then it was 2.2 standard deviations above the mean. You get a 72. Okay? Now, what does it mean to be 2 standard deviations above the mean in a normally distributed population or sample of test scores?
You did above average by a factor.
It's a bunch above average. How much above average? How much is 1 standard deviation above average?
10, 34.
This is a distribution now. How many people are below average? What percent? 50% are below average. What percent are below one standard deviation below the mean, above the mean?
What, isn't it in the, like from -1 to 1, you have 68%?
That's right. So how much do you have from 0 to 1? 34%. So you got 50 plus 34. We're going to come back. We're going to draw this. This is the only way you can understand it. It's the only way you can understand it is draw it. So don't just hang with me though, because you got it here. So it's 50% below mean. There's 34% by definition that are one standard deviation above the mean. 34% that are one standard deviation below the mean. So how many are there from one standard deviation above the mean down? 50 plus 34. There's 84% of the people are two standard deviation or one standard deviation and down. Now, if you think about quartiles,
Did you do, you scored above the 16th percentile, am I saying that correctly?
oh yeah,
Okay,
yeah, way above it.
well, yes, but.
I'm above the 16%. That's just one standard deviation.
I know. I
Okay?
just wanted to make sure.
How many more are there between that 34% and all the rest of them? If there's half that are above the mean, and there's 34% that are from the mean to one standard deviation, how many are there above one standard deviation? What?
Oh, 16.
16%, isn't it? Okay? 16%. So if you scored a 60 on that test, that was one standard deviation, 10 points, above the mean. That's a T-score. And you scored better than 84% of the people who took the test. Okay? If you are two standard deviations around the mean, about how much, what percent is that?
If you're 84%.
It's 84% that is from one standard deviation down. You want me to draw it?
Yes.
Okay. It is the only way I want you to see. If you don't draw it, you will not get it. You will not get it if you don't draw it. So by God, you better draw it every single time.
You better draw it.
I'm going to draw it. I am going to draw it. I'm not going to use that one though.
There are worms in the screen.
Yeah.
God, this thing just drives me mad. Or bad enough to be bad. Okay? Draw your line down here and call this scores. Okay? Doesn't matter what. Right in the middle is what score in the normal distribution. What, it's 0 if it's a z-score, but what value is it? What statistic is it? What parameter is it? It's the mean. What else is it? It's the median. What else is it? It's the mode. A standard deviation, number one, it's symmetrical so that the mean, median, and mode are exactly the same. And it looks like this. This is mean, or median, and mode. What is median? MD?
Yeah.
And mode, MO?
Uh-huh.
I don't know. Okay.
So
It's all the same. Now, how much, what percent is over here? It's symmetrical. 50%. This is the distribution. These are the frequencies. The frequencies of people. Okay? And, you know, we've got all these folks along in here. Now, this right here is one standard deviation below the mean. and this is one standard deviation.
So you just cut it in half?
No, didn't cut it in half.
You didn't cut this part?
No, it's not in half. It's just by definition, it's whatever I have to get about 34% here and about 34% here. Let's just use that t-score and say that the mean was 50 and the standard deviation was 10. So what would one standard deviation below the mean be? 40. These are the scores, 40, 50, 60. How many people, what percent of the people scored between 40 and 60? 68%. Okay? What percent scored less than 60?
84.
Less than 60 is these 34 plus these 50, it's 84. What percent, you see how you draw it, you see it every time? What percent scored better than 60? 16%. There's 34 here, so it must be 16 all the way out here. Now let's go 2 standard deviations above the mean. How much is in here and how much is in here? What percent of the population, by definition? 13.5%.
Okay, I'm sorry, can you explain that, or should I bother you about that?
It was,
Connects.
I'm just saying for the way that I draw it is really a lot simpler for me to understand. And like with the 68% and the 95, and then like the 2.5s on the outside.
Well, let's just do the math.
So I'm just saying, so they could see where you were getting the individual values from. From the,
Schoolhouse Rock for this.
I'm just saying for my simple mind, and I feel like I have to know things very simply, so, you know.
What is 68% and 27%? What is 68% and 20?
Oh, because that's the area which you are 100% certain, leaving your .05 for uncertainty.
Don't get into all that 05 certainty and all that kind of
Well, I
stuff.
was
Just-
trying to figure out where these percentages are like coming from.
No, they're coming from the definition of a normal distribution, period. This is the definition of a normal distribution, period.
Isn't that confidence interval?
We'll get into that.
Okay.
This is the definition of a normal distribution. Period. There isn't any way to, it's just a definition. It's what people have observed, statisticians have observed about men's weight. The average man weighs 180 pounds, and the standard deviation is 20 pounds, and so 34% of them weigh between 180 and what did I say, standard deviation is 20? 34% weigh between 180 and 200. And 34% weigh between 160 and 180. And 16% weigh less than 160. And 16% weigh more than 200. And 2.5% weigh more than 200 plus 20, more than 220. By definition, that's the only way to know it. You just got to memorize that. I can look it up in a table of the z distribution. The easiest way is just to memorize it. So yes, this right here this is minus 2 standard deviations, all the way up here to plus 2 standard deviations, equal 95% of the distribution. by definition.
Thank you.
If you want to go further, go out 3 standard deviations, then it's about really 2.56 standard deviations. There's about a half on either side. So that means there's 1 between 2 and 3. You see, if it's 2.56 and this is 2, then in that 0.56 is about 1% and a half. From how many standard deviations? From 3 to how far? Infinity. And this other side, from 3 to infinity. But from 2 to 3, there's 1%. 2 to 2.56. So let's go back then to that 2 standard deviations above the mean. What does that mean?
47.5%.
How many? If you scored 2 standard deviations above the mean, how many were below you?
Oh, was that right?
97.5%. You can't do it without drawing the whole damn thing and then figuring it out. Don't just draw it and say, well, it's 47.5%. Don't put it in your mind because you'll get it wrong. You ought to be able to do it like that and then say, well, what percent scores from 2 standard deviations below the mean to 1 standard deviation above? You know. Or 1 standard deviation below to 2 above. Well, it's 2.5 over here, and it's 1 standard deviation is 16 over there. It's 18.5%, and that's about 81.5% that are. Okay. Now, get that fixed, locked, loaded in your heads. I will give you a little exercise of that.
Yes, that would be
A little
fantastic.
exercise of that for you to work together on it to figure out what that means, so that when we come back here, you will have dinked around with it enough to say, yeah, I think I understand what that means. Or that it just still doesn't make any sense to you. Tell me again. Ask each other what that means. Because, you see, I didn't explain it where everyone can understand it. Some of us have our own way of understanding it. Right? And that's good. And I'd say, oh, no, you got to do it like this. Oh, no, you got to do it like this. Well, you don't have to. You got to do it where you understand it. Okay? Next week, we'll start out. I didn't even give you, I'll just bring them back, the rest of that stuff that Randy will get that. But I want you to see what kind of descriptive statistics you will have. Look in our yellow sheet and see what terms we haven't identified yet. Okay?
I know next week was one of the dates that you had on there for our first week.
Now, we sure won't have it next
Okay.
week. It'll be the following
Like
week.
y'all struggle with this.
Okay. Well, next week.
Okay?
Cool.
Cool.
Cool.